Today we'll be doing a slightly more competitive and cheesy video, looking at how the Iron Hands can really get the most out of their Dreadnought characters, and the March of the Ancients stratagem. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy and tactics focused 40k channel where we're all about getting the most out of our miniatures on the tabletop. So Iron Hands Dreadnoughts have been out for a while now, and it's given a lot of time for people to find the strongest combos and nastiest things that they can do with the option to make any Dreadnought a character via the stratagem March of the Ancients for 1 command point. This has been an option since their codex dropped, and Games Workshop felt that this was one of the stratagems that they'd just made a bit too strong. So with the errata they limited it to only being able to affect 1 Dreadnought per army. Because before that you could do some absolutely ridiculous things with character Dreadnoughts. You could theoretically have 3 regular Dreadnoughts, 3 venerable Dreadnoughts and 3 Mortis Dreadnoughts, all armed with anti-tank weapons, and if you put down the pricey command point tag for that, you wouldn't be able to target a single one of them unless you were closest to it, meaning that you could have an entire gun line of Dreadnoughts that was entirely untargetable from your heavy weapons. I'm very happy that Games Workshop have chosen to limit that nightmare from seeing play on the table, but there's still plenty of powerful things that you can do with it. Indeed, it made a starring role at the LVO, with Richard Siegler's winning list having this as a core part of it functioning. So let's take a look at some of the options that we can use when we choose to take this very powerful stratagem. So the March of the Ancients costs 1 command point, and you use it pre-game to nominate one of your Dreadnoughts to become a character. When you do this, it also adds 1 to its leadership and attack characteristics, so it gets a little bit more fighty in close combat. The leadership is normally irrelevant unless you're being targeted by certain psychic powers and things. It's the character keyword that usually is the main part of this benefit, as this opens up the options of getting warlord traits on it, using certain stratagems to protect it, and if it's less than 10 wounds then you won't be able to shoot at the Dreadnought unless it's closest, or if you have sniper weapons as per the normal character targeting keywords. One thing that I'll also mention at the start is that it doesn't have to be a pure Iron Hands list to use this. If you're doing a combined Imperium list and you happen to be running 1 Space Marine Iron Hands successor detachment, then you could easily just spend 1 command point to make one of your Dreadnoughts a character. For example, if you just bought a cheap Mortis Dreadnought with heavy weapons and make it unable to be targeted all game, it would be a very strong addition to an otherwise mixed list. So let's go through each of the advantages then. First of all, that option to make it an untargetable Dreadnought character. Naturally, this only works if you have 9 wounds or less, because if you have 10 wounds or more, then you can still be targeted as it's a very big character. The most common uses of this one are on the Dreadnought, Venerable Dreadnought, the Ironclad Dreadnought, and most importantly in my mind, the Mortis Dreadnought from Forge World. The main advantage for me in this is not having a Dreadnought that can shoot something powerful like a couple of las cannons, potentially put a lot of damage on enemy tanks, and as we said, it's completely safe from enemy shooting unless they have sniper weapons or are able to get right next to it, which if you're screening properly is likely to be hard. That's why I think that the Mortis Dreadnought is probably the most powerful example of this, as you can give it 2 sets of twin las cannons, so you've got 4 las cannons that can't be targeted all game. I believe that loadout is something like 150 or 160 points. Afraid I can't remember exactly. This works well as well with the standard Dreadnought or Venerable Dreadnought. Give them a twin las cannon and a missile launcher, and again you've got a whole load of very nasty anti-tank that your opponent just can't shoot back. Alternatively, you could employ this a bit like people use Chaplain Dreadnoughts. Give a Dreadnought a shooty arm and a fighty arm, and then you have some untargetable anti-tank firepower, and also the Dreadnought is a decent counter-charge threat. So when people reach your battle line, they can potentially stride forwards and put some hurt on your opponent, which is particularly nasty as they get the extra attack from the stratagem as well. It's a very strong use of the stratagem, and I think it's just another example why the character targeting rules don't always work very well, as you have an enormous thing that's clearly a tank, that for almost everyone is going to find it easy to pick out amongst a rank of infantry, but it can't be shot, because it is technically a character, unlike another Dreadnought that's standing right next to it, which can be shot because it lacks that keyword. The next use is to give the Dreadnought a Warlord trait, which you can do by using the stratagem to make the Dreadnought a character, and then using the Hero of the Chapter, the 1 command point stratagem to give a second Warlord trait, to put one on your Dreadnought. Fortunately, Games Workshop have had the foresight to say that you can't give Dreadnought characters relics, because that would open up another whole world of silliness and other stacking buffs that you can put on these monstrous machines. There really are quite a few decent Warlord traits to put on Dreadnoughts. Typically, I'd say the most powerful use of putting a Warlord trait on a Dreadnought is to give it to the biggest, baddest Dreadnought around, the Leviathan Dreadnought, which we often see stomping around with dual storm cannon arrays. For the Leviathan, one decent pick is Student of History. This is the warlord trait that allows them to consolidate 6 inches after fighting, and they can do so in any direction. Essentially, this means that you can just consolidate straight out of close combat, and your opponent can't attack you back. This is best used to keep your Dreadnought out of close combat, so it can keep firing with those enormous storm cannon arrays, even if your opponent happens to have charged it, which is very powerful indeed. Other good picks are Merciless Logic, where you get extra shots on rolls of 6. So basically, if you spin up those dual storm cannon arrays, which get 20 shots in total, every roll of 6 to hit will get you another attack. With all of the buffs that Iron Hands already have to their shooting, this just adds an extra amount of damage output on one of the strongest models in your entire army, so it could certainly be worth the extra command point. There's also Flesh's Weakness to give the Leviathan or other Dreadnought a 5+ Feel No Pain type save, which will significantly increase its durability over the standard Iron Hands 6+ Feel No Pain. From the main book, if you happen to be an Iron Hands successor chapter, you could also use Iron Resolve. So you could have, say, Master Artisans and Stealthy on the Dreadnought, and then have the Iron Resolve Warlord trait to still have that 6+ Feel No Pain type save, and an extra wound as well thrown in to boot. Finally, on a more fighty type of Dreadnought, you could put Imperium's Sword on it, to give them an extra attack and strength on the charge, which really amps up a Dreadnought's already considerable combat prowess, and this is even on top of having the extra attack from the Dreadnought Stratagem in the first place. There really are a whole ton of powerful benefits that you can use this stratagem for, and it's pretty tricky to pick which one of these is the best, as they're all very powerful buffs indeed. As well as the Leviathan Dreadnought, you could also put this on things like Relic Contemptors or Deredeos, both of which also have very powerful shooting, and will certainly profit from any defensive buffs as well. The third major benefit is unlocking the character rule for certain stratagems, such as the one that we've seen at use in the LVO recently, Cogitated Martyrdom. This allows nearby Iron Hands infantry to take mortal wounds on behalf of the Dreadnought, therefore keeping the Dreadnought alive. This is absolutely standout on Iron Hands intercessors, who have a very low cost of points to wound in the first place, and also have their 6-up Feel No Pain to shrug off those mortal wounds, which you can make better through a few sources. This means that you can add one extra layer of defense to your already almost invincible Leviathan Dreadnought, and you could potentially use it to protect other big Dreadnoughts as well, say a Deredeo that was giving a 5+ invul save to some nearby vehicles, and then it's very hard to take out the Deredeo if you're protecting it with this one command point stratagem. You can potentially combine these to get multiple benefits, so you could have a Leviathan with a very nice warlord trait to buff its shooting, and then defend it with Cogitated Martyrdom, or you could maybe have a Mortis Dreadnought that can't be shot, and can fall back from close combat with ease with Student of History, and if the enemy puts too much damage on it, then use Cogitated Martyrdom to keep it alive. My two single favourite uses for the stratagem are for that Mortis with quad las cannons, and the Leviathan with the storm cannons, either for the Student of History, or extra defense or extra shooting, as the game ahead dictates. Remember, when you're using Iron Hands, they have a lot of other synergies with Dreadnoughts. In particular, if you put all these buffs on a Dreadnought and then make its defense even more obnoxious with the Ironstone, then that's great. Lieutenants can stack your Dreadnought with reroll 1s, and you could pair it with the Master of the Forge for repairing 3 wounds a turn, and maybe having +1 to hit as well. The Chaplain Dreadnoughts that have been doing very well in the current meta essentially get the benefit of being characters baked into their points cost, which is one of the reasons that we're seeing a lot of Iron Hands Chaplain Dreadnoughts stomping around at the moment. They are more expensive than their Venerable Dreadnought equivalents, but they do get that invul save, litanies, an extra wound, and the all-important character targeting bonus, and you can also give one or more of them a warlord trait, particularly something like Imperium's Sword, to make them ridiculously fighty in the fight phase. Enjoy this while it lasts, because if Games Workshop doesn't fix this in the Spring Balance update, then I'd be absolutely amazed. There are a few downsides to running character Dreadnoughts. Firstly, in certain missions such as ITC, you might get bonus points for killing characters or putting wounds on them, and some armies do have flat bonuses against characters, such as Raven Guard having +1 to hit and wound against all of them. Against these sort of things, you do have to weigh up the risks and benefits of whether you're wanting to make a character Dreadnought a character in the first place. Particularly against Raven Guard, it's going to have serious consequences. And as we've already said, I wouldn't be surprised if something to do with Iron Hand's character Dreadnought synergy gets changed in the Spring Balance update, as Games Workshop do tend to be quite sensible in breaking some of the extreme synergies that we can get from crazy stacking buffs. And Iron Hand's character Dreadnoughts have been doing very well in big tournaments these days. So let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. particularly if I've missed anything obvious, or any other sneaky shenanigans that we can do with Iron Hand's character Dreadnoughts. Having the character keyword really opens up a whole ton of opportunities for these guys, and I'm not certain that I've talked about all of them. If you'd like to hear more regular 40k Tactics content like this, then feel free to subscribe to the channel, as Auspex Tactics has 40k videos coming out every day. If you live in the UK and are thinking about picking up any 40k in the near future, I fully recommend Element Games, who sell most Games Workshop products at a decent discount and have cheap delivery. If you click the link down in the video description before buying from them, then a little bit of the money that you spent on the purchase goes towards Auspex Tactics without costing you any more at all. So it's one easy way to support the channel if you were thinking of ordering some model soldiers anytime soon. Thanks very much for listening. I'll hope to see you guys in the next episode.